Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Chang, anchor of Bloomberg Technology on Bloomberg Television, and I am delighted to be here at the Bloomberg Green Festival. And it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Enrique Lores, the CEO of HP Inc., a company that makes everything from printers to 3D printers to digital manufacturing, and of course has a long and storied history. Enrique, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Emily. Great to be here. And thank you for the spotlight you will be putting on sustainability. It's really important for us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to start by setting some context for our viewers because the pandemic has changed the priorities of every company, every industry, every household. How has COVID-19 impacted your priorities at HP Inc.?
Actually, you're absolutely right. The pandemic has had a fundamental impact in our lives, and therefore is going to have a fundamental impact in our company. We are seeing that the pace of change is accelerating. We are seeing that fundamental things in our lives are different, are going to be different. How we work, whether our employees come to the office to work or work from home, where our kids learning, are they learning from schools or are they learning from home, how healthcare is being provided. Really fundamental things are changing, and all these changes are opening opportunities for us to use technology to help our customers to make their lives better. And this is where our focus is. How can we translate these changes into opportunities for us and for our companies? At the same time, we also have seen the need to change our approach in many areas, the need to have a more approachable leadership style, to be closer to our employees whose lives are totally changing because they need to work from home while at the same time their kids are learning from home. It's not easy. Where they cannot be with their colleagues regularly, it's also not easy. So how do we get closer to our employees? How do we have a more humane style, a more approachable style, much more focus on compassion? Is a big change also that we are driving.
Absolutely. You and I are both based in California, where we're not just facing a pandemic, but devastating fires across the state, ashy skies, polluted air. We can't even go outside. I recently spoke with Bill Gates, who told me he thinks that climate change could be a worse disaster than COVID. How is this impacting how you're running the business and how you think about your priorities?
I think I actually agree with that comment. The impact that climate change is having and is evident that is impacting our lives very severely today. It's something that really we need to take into consideration as companies. And we are looking at it from many different angles. First is how do we continue to grow our business, but at the same time, we reduce the footprint that we are creating in our planet. And we look at what materials we use when we build our products. We look at how do we build programs so when consumers are using our products, they send them back so we can recycle them. So we minimize the impact again that these products will be having. How do we collaborate with our communities to make sure that as they use our products, they don't have only a negative impact, they have actually a positive impact. And one of the best examples is what we are doing on the printing space. Many people associate printing with killing trees and with cutting trees to produce paper. We have totally changed that. We are fostering to make sure that when customers are using paper, that paper comes from forests that were planted to create paper. And in the cases where it does not happen, we have committed to plant trees to complement that, to the point that the theme that we're trying to convey is if you want to see more trees in the planet, what you need to do is to print more because more trees will be planted to be used as paper. And it's a big change, but really it's really because of this focus we have on not only minimizing the impact, but really helping the communities where we operate.
We're going to talk a little bit more about the sustainability of the printer business in general. Before we go there, though, I want to talk about culture because in order to make these changes, you have to have a strong culture, a strong foundation at your company, a purpose-driven culture. And I'm curious, how do you create that culture when work is remote, your entire workforce is distributed, they've got kids at home who are trying to learn on their computers if they have them, and they can't even go outside because of the air quality. I mean, I know the last couple of weeks have been tough for a lot of people in the Bay Area. How do you even begin to create a culture when you're not together?
The great thing of HP is that this is not a culture that we need to create. This is the culture that the company has had since it was founded 80 years ago. Many companies talk now about the need to invent stakeholder capitalism. Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard invented that 80 years ago. And this has been always at the core of what the company has been. They were the first leaders stating that when a company only focuses on profit, is not delivering the value that it should be to the society, and that this needs to be a critical part of what the company does. So in our case, it's not so much about creating a new culture, it's about making sure that the culture is alive and that employees continue to embrace the culture that we have had for a long time. How we are doing that? Really fairly simple by following our key values in everything we do. In situations of uncertainty, as we are living today, I strongly believe that core values need to become our compass. They need to drive our actions. They need to help us to make the difficult decisions that all of us have had to make during the last months. And when those values are really founded on the trust that we think we need to have within ourselves, with a goal to have a positive impact in our communities, the strong belief that innovation is going to help us to create a better world. When you believe on these things, then you can communicate and drive the employees and make sure that they really feel the passion for what you want to do in the same way we all do.
At the same time, the economy is in a recession. You've got tens of millions of people who've lost their jobs. People are hurting, and every business is feeling the economic impacts of this. I'm curious how demand has been impacted for you. I imagine with all the working from home and schooling from home, people are buying printers. I mean, I know I needed to buy one because I can't go into the office.
We have seen both sides of the impact of the current situation. On one side, as employees are not in the office, they are printing less in the office, and this has had a negative impact. But at the same time, with more people working from home, more kids learning from home, this has clearly increased the demand for all of our home business. At the same time, we also have a very important PC business. And what we have learned during the last months is that PCs have become essential. If you want to work from home, if you want your kids to learn from home, if you want to also entertain from home with gaming, you need a PC. And what we have seen is that we are moving from a paradigm where there was a PC per household to a paradigm where we need a PC per person. And this has really increased the demand for PCs because today PCs really are a core product for almost everything we want to do from home.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned what you're doing in terms of planting trees to make up for the paper that people are using. What about the actual creation of the PCs and the printers? What are you doing to make the supply chain from start to finish more sustainable?
We are working across all elements of the value chain. It starts from what materials do we choose when we design the products to make sure that we use, for example, ocean-bound plastic to avoid that plastic goes back to the oceans. And we launched last year the first PC that was using ocean-bound plastic. We look at what programs do we use in terms of recycling and make sure that when a customer uses a cartridge, there is a mechanism for that customers to send the cartridge back to us so we can send a new cartridge and we can recycle that product. We look at the energy that we consume both in the factories and in our offices to make sure that we minimize the consumption of energy. We look at the usage that we do of plastic for only one time and look for any opportunity that we have to reduce that and to mitigate that. Is really, as I was saying before, values are very important for us as a company. Minimizing and actually helping the planet is one of our values. And across every action we take, we really have this in our minds as we define and drive our businesses.
Meantime, the supply chain is long, and I wonder, does your supply chain go all the way to China? And have you been able to maintain the integrity of the supply chain given all of these geopolitical issues? Can you still make the choices you want to make in the supply chain when the world is just so complicated?
I think you said it right. The world is complicated, and we think it's going to be getting more complicated during the next months. So we are looking for opportunities to continue to make our supply chain more resilient. We have learned during the crisis that the dependency we had with a few countries could be a problem if we face a situation like what we have faced during the last months. So we are looking for opportunities to make it more flexible, to make it more local, to bring more production capacity closer to where customers will be using our products, and we are driving that internally. This is also a great opportunity for our 3D and digital manufacturing business, because as it's not a we are not the only company that is going to be facing the need to drive this change. Many other companies will have to move their production capabilities closer to their customers. And when doing that, they will be looking for the flexibility, the reduction in delivery time that 3D printing brings. So it's something we are driving internally, but also an opportunity that we have to grow one of our businesses.
You mentioned you think the world will get only more complicated. How so?
Well, if we look at the trends that we have been living in a world where globalization was accepted and supported around the globe. This is today being challenged, and we are seeing tensions between the US and China, between many different countries that are going to be driving the need for us to really look at how should we operating in this new environment.
I want to talk a little bit about the circular economy because I know it's something that you're thinking about in terms of plastic use, which you mentioned. How is that influencing the decisions that you're making?
Is part of our effort to reduce the footprint of our business. And we are looking at any opportunity we have to make that happen. A great example are some of the service programs that we have put in place for our printing business. We have seen, and this is not only driven by sustainability, this is also driven by how customer preferences are changing. We have learned, and this has actually accelerated during the pandemic, that customers want to buy subscriptions, that they want to buy as a service. And a great program we have is we offer printing as a subscription for consumers. As part of this what this program means is we monitor the amount of ink in the printers of our customers. And before they run out of ink, we send them a new cartridge. But when we send them a new cartridge, in that same box, customers can send us back the cartridge they used. And then when we get it back, we can recycle and we can minimize the impact that that cartridge would have had. So we are addressing the needs of our customers by moving into subscription, and at the same time building a closed cycle that is really minimizing the impact of our business.
HP has had many chapters in its history. For decades, it was one of the most legendary companies in Silicon Valley. The last decade struggled a bit more. We saw the split, HP Inc. and HP Enterprise. There was the Xerox bid, which later Xerox moved on. What do you want the next chapter of HP Inc. to be?
I have been in the company for a long time. I joined the company as an intern 31 years ago. And I joined the company because of the passion that the teams had for their business, how they believe that innovation and technology were going to have an impact in the world. And those same factors, those same feelings I had 30 years ago, are those that are driving me every day. I think as a company, we have a great opportunity to develop technology to make lives better for everyone, everywhere. We can do that in the core businesses that we have. We can continue to do that in personal systems and print. But we are also doing that in new businesses that we are creating. We are creating a new 3D printing business that is going to transform how products are being designed and manufactured. We also have core technologies in microfluidics that can enable us to penetrate new spaces in the healthcare space, in the measurement space that we are working on and that we are building. So really the next chapter of the company is going to be driven by the opportunity to continue to lead in the market where we are, while at the same time, we use our technologies to create new businesses, to create new categories where we will continue to help our customers.
We've been covering how 3D printing can create everything from PPE to airplanes. How transformative do you think 3D printing can and will be? Give us some specific examples of things that can be made this way that you never could have imagined.
I think it's going to be very, very fundamental. And many of the things that have happened during the pandemic have demonstrated how this technology really will help the world to be a better place. If you remember during the first months of the pandemic, the first weeks of the pandemic, hospitals were struggling to get many critical parts. They were struggling for ventilators. They were struggling to find masks. They were struggling to find nasal swabs to do PCR tests. In days, we were able to design those products, manufacture those products, and get those products to hospitals, to doctors that desperately needed them. And we did that by working with the customers that had bought 3D printers for things that were totally different. Customers that had bought printers to do automotive parts, they started to produce medical parts. And this happened all over the world. So we were able to show that with this technology, you can design, produce, and distribute products in days versus months that it takes with traditional technologies. And since the pandemic started, we have manufactured more than 4 million parts that have gone to hospitals, to doctors, to really help in this very difficult situation. So that's a great example of how transformative this technology will be. And this is why we believe so strongly that this is really going to make a big contribution in the world.
So how do you factor sustainability into your business strategy? I mean, every business has a triple bottom line, right? How do you make choices on a daily basis that prioritize long-term gain over short-term pain?
The fundamental thing is to believe that you don't need to make that choice. That when you focus on sustainability, it's not only because of the long-term implications, it's also because today is a business imperative. Today, our customers are asking us to be more sustainable. Last year, we won more than $1.6 billion because of our sustainability programs. Because customers were asking us, how do we manufacture our products? Where do we manufacture them? What is the energy consumption that our products are going to have? So it's really not only about the future, it's about the present, and we are driving that and making that real every day.
Now, at the same time, we've been going through a pandemic and fires. We've also been facing a movement across the United States and around the world, the Black Lives Matter movement, and urgent calls for social change. What are you doing at the company to make sure the workforce that you have represents the people of the world and that underrepresented minorities are well represented at your company?
Sustainability for us is driven by many different areas. One is, what do we do from an environmental perspective? The other key pillar is, what are we doing from a people perspective? And diversity and inclusion have been a priority for us since separation. But we learned during the last weeks that we have much more work to do. Even if this had been a priority for us for many years, clearly we have more work to do to make sure that many of our colleagues have the same opportunities that we have. And not only that, when I think about the company, I think the company is both a community, and we need to make sure our community operates the way we think it should operate, but a company is also a platform. And we have the opportunity to influence our suppliers, our partners, and the communities where we serve. And this is the focus that we are putting. We are driving action to improve the company internally. And for example, we have committed that by 2025, we will double the number of African American executives in the company. And this is a good metric because to get there, We need to take action across all the company to get there. But we're also committed to use the strength that we have as a company to influence our suppliers, to make sure that they have as well diversity policies, diversity practices. And we are working with governments and communities all over the world to drive the right type of actions so we can really use the current situation to make a change that should have happened many, many years ago.
Now, I was pleasantly surprised when I looked at HP Inc.'s board that almost half of your board members are women, several directors are people of color, and I'm curious how you found that to be a benefit as you've been running the company. Like, can you give us an example of how, having a diverse board actually made HP Inc. a better place, helped you make a better decision?
I mean, for us is really important. This helps us to make sure that when we are in the boardroom, we get many different perspectives, because diversity is important, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because our customer base is diverse. They are very different, and we need to make sure that we have this diversity represented in the boardroom. Examples of that happen every day. When we were talking, for example, about the programs that we have about racial injustice and racial inequality, many of our board members were able to explain their personal situations, what they went through, the experiences that they went through their lives. And by listening to them, by learning about them, you realize in a much more effective way what are the changes that you need to drive as an executive. Because it's very different to hear about something in the news versus when someone that you know and respect shares their personal experiences, their personal lives, you really feel it much, much closer. And there is not a substitute for that.
Why do you think other companies can't change their boards more quickly?
I think in our case, we were fortunate that when we split, we had the opportunity of redesigning our board almost completely. And diversity was very important at that point, and we designed the board with that objective. When we think about other companies, it's much harder to go through a similar process. Now, I also believe that when you set an objective and you believe on the objective, you find ways of making it happen. And this is why, for example, we decided to support the initiative here in California of board diversity, because we think it will be beneficial for all companies to have a board with a similar structure to the structure that we have.
How much do customers care about diversity?
Every time they care more. I think when I think about the value that brands have, more and more is not just about the value that products bring. It's also driven by what are the values that companies stand for. And more people want to buy based on values, not just based on products. So as we look into this, having values that we think are critical for the humanity is really important for us, because over time, this becomes a key competitive differentiator as well.
Now, you've had 31 years to think about it since your time as an intern. As I mentioned, HP has had many chapters. What do you want your legacy to be?
I think it needs to be a combination of three things. I want the company to expand into new businesses where technology can help people to live better. I want also to convert HP into a great school of leaders and be recognized as the company that creates leaders for the industry and for other companies. And I want also HP to become a lighthouse for diversity and sustainability. I really think that going forward, these two things are going to be fundamental for every company. It's part of our values, it's part of our culture. And going forward, we have an opportunity of really driving those and having an impact in the world.
All right, Enrique Lores, CEO of HP Inc. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We'll be checking back in with you to see how you're doing on building your legacy and writing that next chapter. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice to be with you.